Today we're going to talk about a mental model so powerful it might just change the way you see everything. We're talking about a secret to thinking more clearly and making much, much better decisions.
So, let's just dive right in with a question I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. You see it all the time, right? Really smart people, people with the best intentions. And yet, sometimes they make just awful decisions. How does that happen?
Well, the answer usually comes in two parts. First, it's because they get drawn in by a really simple, really convincing story.
And they mistake that story for the actual messy, complicated truth. See, that simple story, we're going to call that the map. And that complicated reality, that's the territory. And trust me, forgetting the difference between those two, that's where everything starts to go wrong.
When you forget that difference, you end up in this really dangerous place. We can call it the confident wrong decision. It's that moment you feel totally certain you're right, but you're actually acting on completely flawed information.
And the thing is, we are surrounded by these illusions of knowledge. I mean, think about it. KPI dashboards, executive summaries, news headlines, forecasts, your social media feed, they all give you this neat, tidy picture of reality. But it's just a picture. It's kind of like a GPS that tells you with 100% confidence to turn left right off a cliff because its map hasn't been updated in 5 years.
Okay, so how do we avoid driving off that cliff? We start by getting one simple, but honestly, pretty profound idea deep into our brains. Your world is a map. Almost everything you think you know isn't reality itself. It's just a representation of it.
And we mistake the map for the territory all the time. You look at a company org chart and you think, okay, I get how this place works. Nope. That's the map. The territory is that invisible network of favors, alliances, and quiet influence. You know how work really gets done? Or a resume, right? That's a map. The territory is what that person is actually capable of. We're constantly using these little simplified maps to navigate a super complex world. But here's the twist, and this is really important. Maps aren't bad. In fact, we couldn't live without them. The perfect example is the London Underground map. Geographically, it's a total lie, it's a mess. The distances are wrong, the directions are off. But for its one specific purpose, getting you from one station to another, it's a work of genius. And that proves a crucial point. The goal of a map isn't to be perfectly accurate. The goal is to be useful.
The statistician George E.P. Box absolutely nailed this with this one fantastic quote. See, models, or maps, are useful precisely because they leave things out. I mean, if your map was as complicated and detailed as the real world, what good would it be? It'd be completely useless.
But, and this is a big but, there's a catch. The guy who came up with this whole idea, Alfred Korzybski, he pointed out that for a map to actually work, it has to have a similar structure to the territory. What that means is, it has to connect to reality in the ways that actually matter for the decision you're trying to make.
So, how do we make sure our maps are useful guides and not dangerous illusions? Well, what we need is a simple toolkit, a reality check. And here it is. It's just 3 simple questions you need to ask. Number 1, has the territory changed? Because maps get old and they get old fast. Number 2, who drew this map and why? You have to remember every map maker has an agenda and their own blind spots. And number 3, and this one's a little mind-bending, is the map itself changing the territory? Let's put this toolkit to work with some real-world examples, because this is where it gets really interesting. This is where you can see how maps literally reshape our world.
All right, so here's a classic story about Jeff Bezos at Amazon. The map, in this case, was his corporate dashboard, and it was telling him customer service wait times were great, like under a minute. Awesome, right? But the territory, the real stories from actual customers, was telling a very different story. People were saying they were on hold for over 10 minutes. So what did Bezos do? He decided to check the territory for himself. Right in the middle of a big meeting, he picked up the phone, dialed the company's 1-800 number, and just waited. His takeaway from this is pure gold. When the data and the anecdotes disagree, the anecdotes are usually right.
And that's why checking in with reality matters so much, because the territory is always changing. A map of the top tech companies from 1990 would look like a museum piece today. Even a map from 2005 is totally out of date. Your maps require constant updates.
Okay, now for that second question from our toolkit. Who drew the map and what was their motive? And this is a really powerful and frankly tragic example. After World War I, European diplomats literally took a map and a ruler and drew straight lines across it, creating the borders of the modern Middle East. Their goal wasn't to reflect the territory, the incredibly complex human landscape of different tribes and ethnic groups, not at all. Their goal was to serve their own strategic interests. And the result of that map was generations of conflict.
And that brings us to our third question. Can the map actually change the territory? Oh, absolutely. Think about the battle for New York City in the 20th century. You had this powerful city planner, Robert Moses. His map of the city was of an orderly, efficient machine built for cars. But then you had the activist Jane Jacobs. She didn't see a map. She saw the territory. She saw a messy, vibrant, living ecosystem built for people. See, Moses's plan wasn't just a drawing. His plan was to literally bulldoze the real city, the territory, until it looked just like his map.
So these are some big examples. The real question is, how do we bring this home? How do we make this a practical tool you can use every single day to avoid these kinds of traps in your own life?
The answer is you can use this everywhere. Seriously, that news headline you just scrolled past, that's a map. The project plan you're reviewing at work, a map. Even the data from your fitness tracker, that's just a map of your health, not the real thing. For all of these, you have to stop and ask yourself, wait a minute, does this map actually line up with reality?
You know, all of this, it really all comes down to one single incredibly powerful question. This is the ultimate reality check. It's the one thing that will keep your thinking sharp and grounded in what's actually real.
And the question is this, just ask yourself, am I reasoning about the territory or about a map of the territory that someone drew for some purpose? Just asking that one question, I promise you, will force you to see things differently. It'll help you make smarter, better decisions. It sounds so simple, but that little mental shift, it can change absolutely everything.